I don't know if everyone saw the email from Jared. He's having connectivity issues. I just sent him a message. Hopefully, I sent him a couple of different invites, but he might just
I can. Sorry, I can get us started in the meantime if that would work. Oh, hello.
I can hear you. It just takes a minute.
Do we have enough people here? Yeah, no, we're good.
Jared's joining us now.
Okay, thank goodness.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Jared.
All right, we are at 5 after, so unless there's any objection, we should probably call this to order, unless someone has already done that. Okay. Pull up my email here real quick. There we go. All right, so I call this meeting to order at 5:05 on November 9th. Present are Mia Young, Aaron Sargent, Xander Johnson, Nicholas Vila, and Jake Robinson. Someone remind me if this is enough for a quorum.
I believe 3 is enough for a quorum, so yes.
Okay. Okay, so first thing we're going to be doing is approving our agenda, which was sent out by Mia. And so is there any discussion on this? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second that motion.
All right, let's do a vote. Okay, I'm assuming that Jake is raising his hand, but I'm not sure because.
Yes, sorry, my camera's not working right now.
Okay, so that is 3 in favor and none against because I don't vote. All right, so the agenda is now adopted. Next item on our agenda is to approve the minutes from November 2nd. Alice joining us, so that's great. Alice, to catch you up, we just approved the agenda from the one that Mia sent out, and we were about to do the minutes from last session. Okay. So we are looking at the approval of the minutes from November 2nd of 2023. Do we have any discussion on that? All right. So I will entertain motions to approve the minutes.
So motioned.
Seconded.
All right. All those in favor? And Jake, are you raising your hand? All right. Well, I can say that Xander, Nick, and Alice are in favor. Jake, oh, there we go. We have a hand from Jake. So that is unanimous. All right. Moving on to reports. I don't have any reports. Do we have any reports from you, Aaron? Because you're the last standing advisor at the moment.
I have some things I'll talk about later in the new business, but I don't have anything to report. Thank you.
Okay, great. CWU.
Yeah, just coming up next week is the Fee Fair. If you guys are interested, it'll be 11 to 1 p.m. And that is all I have for updates.
Great. Do we have any communications received?
Not that I am aware of. No.
Okay, and we'll pause for public comment here.
I would like to make a public comment. He's not here, but this Tuesday was our advisor Joey Bryant's birthday. And I would just like to take this moment to say happy belated birthday, Joey, even though you're not here right now, you're here in our hearts.
I second that motion. Okay, so that's great. Any other public comments? You can make as many private comments as you want. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to new business. We've only got 3 things on our agenda, so this should be pretty fast. We have the budget proposal for 2024. And I'm assuming Mia, you're going to be talking to, or Aaron, you're going to be talking about this. Okay, so I will leave you the floor then.
Great, thank you. So we are off to a great start, I would say. Well, not really, but not any worse, I think, than we were at last year. As you recall, we did increase the fee for this year. And that definitely helped. Our tuition projection is up a little bit from where we were at last year. Maybe a couple $100,000 per quarter. And what we're talking about first is going to be the S&A base allocation reduction. Last year we did a 10%. Some of you were part of that decision. We decided to do a 10% reduction to all of the base funded areas. The allocation last year was $7,450,000. We rolled back into the S&A fund $745,000. And just to kind of give a little bit more context to that, our total tuition that we ended up collecting, tuition being the S&A fee portion of the tuition, was $5.2 million. So that left a total deficit of $2,184,000 from what we sort of push out to the areas, the $7.45 million, to what we bring back in on the fee. The hope, of course, is that we bring in at least as much as we allocate out. Otherwise, we're, of course, spending into reserves and things. So 2.1, almost $2.2 million deficit. We brought back in $745,000. And then there was an additional decision made to roll back all of the unspent funding, which would have been an accumulation over 2 years. And if I start saying something wrong, please jump in, because you all were part of that decision, and I am hoping I understand everything correctly, but if something seems strange, please jump in. So the unspent funds over, oh yes, Alice.
From my understanding, wasn't the 10% a second 10%? I believe the committee prior to my joining did 10%. Then the committee I originally joined did an additional 10%.
That's possible. When I did the entry to actually bring it back, I only show that 745,000. I do not. If there was one, it could have maybe been in the prior year, or perhaps a reduction to the initial allocation, though that doesn't sound as likely, because I believe that we, the budget, the allocation is set for 4 years. And so I can find out for you, but that is not how I understood it. And it's not what my numbers sort of reflect. But we did bring back all of the unspent funds from the previous 2 years, which was about 1.7 million. And I'm not sure if maybe that was part of it, like we had asked a reduction. I'm not sure. I can find out though for you. So thank you for the question.
Thank you.
After we brought back the unspent funds, we ended up with a fund addition essentially of 317,000. Now, I want to talk about the $1.7 million rollback. That is sort of, I'm saying that's a one-time thing. That isn't something we're going to be able to roll back every year. One consideration is that was 2 years worth of buildup of unspent funds. Another factor is that, you know, when you do make a decision to roll back funding, it can have an impact on how the future funding is spent. And what I mean is, you know, if I know that I have $50,000 or whatever, and then I'm probably more likely to make sure I spend it. You know, I know that there's no sort of savings account. And so I'm hesitant to say what that unspent funding portion might look like going forward. So after that being said, we ended up bringing in an additional 317,000 from what we allocated out, which feels like a lot of money to me, but it's almost, you know, it's almost nothing. It's almost flat, I should say. And then that also allows us the supplemental funding and things like that. So looking forward into the current year, we are expecting to have sorry, somebody just pulled up in front of my house for a second. We're expecting to have a little bit of additional tuition revenue at about 5.8 million, which still leaves us a deficit of $1.5 million from what we allocate out to what we bring in the fee revenue. I am going to suggest that we do the 10% reduction again this year, which is not an additional 10%, but it's that sort of same 10%. That will get us to a deficit of 811,000. So in sort of talking with this out, I believe we can spend some of our reserves down to kind of get us through the rest of this quadrennium. I would also recommend, without really knowing what it's going to look like, I'm going to kind of, I want to stay in order of the agenda, and I don't want to break any of Robert's rules, but I may jump around just a little bit. So if I need to be staying in line, please let me know. But kind of going into some of the other points, we have a salary savings. I'm going to kind of skip to that for a second. Currently, our policy is to sweep salary savings after 6 months. So if a position is unfilled for 6 months, then we would take that amount that is budgeted and bring it back. And it's all going back into the S&A fund. I want to make sure that's very clear. It's not going to anywhere else. It's really coming back from where it belongs. I would recommend we go back to, again, looking at what we did last year of sweeping that back on a monthly basis. And what it really means is that if a position is empty, rather than that department spending it on goods and services or something else, then we just bring that money back. And then once the position is filled, of course, that funding is back there, but it might provide a little cushion for supplemental funding in the year. So we want to be able to offer that. And then again, looking at the unspent funds at the end of the year, while I think it's going to be significantly less, it would still lessen the impact on what our reserve spending would be. I think that that touches on everything for FY24, but I wanted to also kind of provide a little sort of further out. Next year will be the 3rd year, and we do eventually need to continue. Well, I believe we need to continue to reduce our spending so that our allocation amount is really much closer to what our anticipated tuition dollars are. So we can't, of course, spend out of the reserves indefinitely because they're not an infinite resource. So kind of looking forward, I think based on what I can kind of foresee tuition estimates, there's no indications that anything drastically is going to change. One thing that I know that the administration has done to kind of help out is they've eliminated any S&A fee waivers, though the current students are, so it would be like, for example, if somebody were on like a veteran tuition waiver, usually a lot of those programs will waive all of the fees, but they're gonna stop the S&A fee portion of that waiver, which is about $400,000 to $500,000 a year. So that will help, but it's not going to help the immediate time because it's like the current students it's not going to impact them. It will be something that over the next few years, the waiver will go down, but that's going to be, you know, a few years of an impact. So eventually, I think next year we'll be looking at probably something closer to a 15% reduction in order to get to the 20% reduction that we'll probably need going into the next quadrennium. So we sort of, you know, I've sort of built some numbers based on that, unless there's some, you know, amazing change in enrollment. But that would need to be more than just a couple hundred increase. It would have to probably be something that brings us up closer to pre-COVID levels, which, you know, I don't know that it wouldn't be responsible of me to recommend that we budget based on that. So for now, kind of pulling it back to the current discussion is really those 3 things. I want to propose that we make a 10% reduction in the fee allocation for this year. I'd like to propose and recommend to you all to do the monthly salary sweep, and I can provide data on how, you know, every month when we meet, I can provide that data on how much we're able to save, and then that would be a great way to identify what might be available for supplemental funding, because, you know, we've already allocated it out, but I don't know that there's a great idea of what we have for supplemental, and I think that if there's some room to roll that into it, you're just bringing it back to kind of push out again, perhaps. And then the last thing would be to whatever unspent funding there is at the end of this year, because it's different from what our policy is, I think that we should look at bringing that back in as well to just sort of reduce the impact on the reserve spending. And I'm happy to take any questions. I hope I can answer them. But if not, then I will get an answer for you.
Thank you, Erin. Does anyone have a question for Erin?
I do, yeah. So just to clarify, sorry.
Nick actually beat you
Oh,
just by a
darn.
second. Sorry. Go ahead, Nick.
I just wanted to clarify that At the moment, we are at a deficit of 1.7 million.
Aaron, you're muted, by the way.
Your mic on.
Sorry about that. No, we are not at a deficit of 4.7 million. Currently, where we're at is before we do any kind of reduction or anything, we are at a deficit of 1.5 million compared for the current year compared to what we allocate out versus what we anticipate bringing in through the tuition fee
And-
revenue. Sorry.
And then this year we allocated out how much again?
7.4 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then can I ask a question?
Are you done? Was that your, okay. Go for it, Xander.
Cool. So just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, so we, your recommendation for us is that we implement a 10% base reduction that'll keep us at the 10% base reduction we've had previously, right? So we're not really changing a whole lot. Okay.
Right. And I just, if I could add to that, in all of the budget reports that we've created for this current year, we have put a tentative reduction in those. And so it's something that, saying just in case we did do things the same way as last year. So it is something that is sort of tentatively built into the budgets currently. So I don't think it would be shocking for anybody to see that this year. Was that your only question, Xander?
Yep, that's all from my end. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Aaron? Nick again?
And then correct me if I'm wrong, but the 10% reduction would cause, or I guess be an additional 811,000.
Right. So if we are able to if we do reduce the allocation by 10%, then yes, we will be still at an $811,000 deficit, which would be spending into our reserves, which, that is what they're there for. We are able to, that's an acceptable thing in a short-term situation, but definitely not, of course, in long-term. And that isn't including any potential unspent funding rollback from the other two items of any salary savings or any of the end of the year unspent funds that we roll back. So that would reduce that amount.
Got it. So the 10% would leave the 811,000 in the deficit, right? Okay, cool. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions for Aaron?
If you guys
Alright.
do come up with anything, feel free to reach out.
Okay, great. What else are we looking at? I think the next item on our agenda was the salary savings. I think that's also an Aaron topic.
Yeah, so the salary savings is sort of kind of rolls into that other conversation of where we're at with the funding. Last year, we were operating, I'm sorry. Before the reductions, then the current policy, as I understand it, is to roll back the unfunded salary budget every 6 months. So if there was a position in somebody's office that was unfunded or unfilled for a couple of months, then they would essentially, that savings from not spending it on a salary would be, available for other things. And then but if it was to go beyond 6 months, then we would actually take that funding for the salary that was not spent and bring it back to the S&A fund. Last year, as I understand it, then we changed that to be every month. So for every month that a position was unfilled, these are not student positions, by the way, these are staff positions. For every month that that position was unfilled, then we would bring that, we call it salary savings, but it's that unspent funding that was meant for a salary. And we bring that back into the S&A fund. So my recommendation is that we go back to what we did last year again, and we pull that funding back every month. And that will make sure that, of course, the funding's still available for when the position is filled. But any of the unfilled positions that were for that money that was meant for salaries can be reallocated out for your supplemental funding or brought back into the fund to lessen that impact on reserves. Does anybody have any questions about that one? Again, I am right down the hall, and I'm happy to meet with you all at any time about anything. So.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Erin on that? Erin is raising her own hand.
No, I was drinking coffee.
I know, I'm just teasing.
I think she's doing a great job.
Let's move on to unspent funds then. I think this is also an Erin topic.
Yeah. So the unspent funds, that was the sort of windfall of the 1.7 million that we rolled back at the end of last year. And that is a combination of, for last year, it was a combination of 2 years worth of funding that went out to the areas. For whatever reason, it wasn't spent. It could have been planned, or just because they didn't, some of them I guess maybe didn't know, or but we had decided it. I believe in the past it has been that unspent funding rolls along through the 4-year cycle and is available to be spent. So last year we pulled that unspent funding back into the S&A fund so that it could be then reallocated out. I do not expect that there will be, that was 2 years worth. I wouldn't expect that there would even be half of that available at the end of this year, because I think that when you bring funding like that back, I think that you do impact the ways people may behave as far as spending and saving or not saving. But any unspent funding at the end of this year, I would recommend that we follow what we did last year and that we bring that unspent funding back, since the purpose of the funding is really for the current students. Then to bring that back allows you all to make an intentional decision of how it goes out again, if that's going to be lessening the impact on reserve spending applied to supplemental. But I wouldn't recommend that we have areas carry the FY24 allocation into FY25. I think that my recommendation to you all would be to bring that back into the fund as we did last year, though it's not going to be probably as large of an amount.
All right, anyone have any questions for Erin on that? Comments, special shares? Nick, go for it.
Just a question. Do you know how much the reserves are at the moment?
Yeah. Currently, the current fund balance is 5.7 million. The required amount on that is, of course, for bond payment. And last year, we began the year with a 4.7 million. There's also investment earning income that goes into that fund that we don't necessarily allocate out, but it does, the fund invests money, and so there are earnings that accumulate there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions? Okay, I think that puts us through new business and moves us on to old business, which is the deliberation and voting on the base funding allocation usage request for the career services on the west side. Does everybody have the documents that Mia sent out about that? And I also noticed on the, I can't share it on my screen at the moment since I'm on my tablet, but the S&A website on the CWU page also has the supplemental information regarding the West Side Career Services. The data that we requested last week is there as a supplemental data package. And so if y'all wouldn't mind pulling that up, or if somebody wouldn't mind screen sharing, that would also be great. So like I said, I can't do it at the moment, but it does give us the total interactions that they've had on the West Side for various topics or titles that they've had, you know, like Amazon recruiting presentations or ITM grad skills workshop, you know, that sort of thing. And there are dates associated with this, and it looks like it's a year worth or so, give or take. Is anyone having any problem pulling that up? Okay.
Yeah, can you link this? I mean, I can share my screen if you can link it. I'm having trouble finding it on the web page.
Okay, so hold on.
I'm on the S&A page here.
Okay, so if you go to the S&A page, and then you go to the base funding program reviews from 2022 to 2025,
Okay,
then you go down to Career Services West Side Counselor.
okay, and I see two supplementals.
Yeah, and I believe the 2023 supplemental
Oh,
is the one
2023.
we're looking at. Aaron, please correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think that's the one that we maybe got. But I'm not sure. That's just the one that I spotted that kind of sounds kind of like what we're doing.
Here's what I see. Is this what you're talking about, Jared?
That is what I'm seeing. But once again, I'm not sure if this is actually the one that we're looking at, but this is, it looks similar. And we are doing the funding request for this year. So Aaron, I'm going to lean on you again if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm not sure when this got uploaded. It seems like, what information were you all asking them for last week again?
I had personally requested just some analytics on how many students were being served, which this is absolutely providing. I'm also noticing we have West Side, but we also got Lynchwood down here, or Linwood. Sorry, I don't know the names up here. I'm sorry. West Side, and we got Des Moines and Pierce here. That's a lot of interactions.
Mhm.
I do notice this is 2021 to 2022. So this is the former year's data.
Yeah, and that's why I was wondering if this was current data that was recently uploaded here, or whether this was something from the previous year if this program was going on last year.
You know what? My assumption would be that this is from last year because I think that either myself or Mia would know if we received it and uploaded it this year.
Okay. Have you received any communications from the West Side group that's asking for the funding
No,
request regarding this?
not that I know. I'm gonna go out to another into presence and see if anything was submitted there.
And
And
this is also for the counselor, but I'm not entirely certain that this is the same organization as well. Let me pull up the actual funding request. No, this is career services. If you pull up the main proposal, not the supplemental off that same section, Alice, you'll see that that's actually for career services, which is the group requesting from the West Side at the moment. So I'm not actually directing it as Alice. I was just saying that Alice was screen sharing. So but yeah, so that means it's not a different organization. So I'm not completely off my rocker here.
at least not today.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, we still have to make a decision, or we can punt this to next week, because we can always table something to later.
I Xander,
Is it
please.
standard? Go ahead.
Um, I, I don't think there's much we really need to discuss, admittedly. I think they're just kind of moving funds from one place to another, funds that are just kind of sitting there. And if they intend to use this for like meaningful connections with students, like particularly on the West Side centers that don't always get a lot of support, I think that's I think there's no reason we shouldn't let them do that.
Okay, well, I will open the floor for discussion and any motions that you all would like to make.
Oops.
I mean, that was kind of like pre-discussion, so it works.
I mean, Xander convinced me last week, so I agree with what Xander said. I would happily make a motion to approve this funds proposal for base words.
Okay, since that sounded like you were interested in making a motion, but not actually making a motion, I'm just going to ask one last question. Do we have any discussion points that anyone would like to voice against this idea? Just to equal it out. Okay, so Alice, would you like to make that motion?
I've already made my motion.
Okay, we will then be looking for a second.
I second.
All right, we will be voting in favor if you raise your hand. It looks like everybody. So that passes. All right. Well, that finishes our old business, and we are going to be moving on to the public comment, which is the second call for that.
I would just like to say that I think we've mentioned it before, but how much I appreciate the work that you all do on this committee and the fact that there's real decisions being made, and so it's just really fun for me to get to watch you all going through this, and I'm just happy to be here to witness how cool it is. So thank you for your serving on the committee.
Great. Anyone else want to make a public comment? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain motions to adjourn.
I
I guess I
motion
can
to
do that.
adjourn.
Fantastic. Second?
I second.
Okay. Someone else does actually want to get out of here. And then we will, vote to adjourn, I guess. All right, we're out of here. It's been fun. I will see you all later.
Thank you all. Have a good night.